Good afternoon and welcome. Welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Omaha. My name is Sarah Voss, and I'm here today to help out our settled minister, the Reverend Sherry Woodbury, who unfortunately had a previously scheduled all-day church obligation for today and could not guarantee that she would be finished in time to open this celebration of Elfriede Crage's life. However, she is here. You guys sort of wave at everybody, and we're so glad that you are here. I am very, very pleased as a retired Unitarian Universalist minister affiliated with this church. It's my great privilege to officiate this service where we honor Elfriede Crage's life. And I'd like to offer an extra warm welcome to those of you who have traveled some distance in order to be with us on this day. Your presence here is very, very important. Thank you. Thank you all for coming. It is good that you are here. Let us be honest with death. Let us not pretend that it is less than it is. It is separation. It is sorrow. It is grief. But let us neither pretend that death is more than it is. It is not annihilation. As long as memory endures, Elfriede's influence will be felt. It is not an end to love. Humanity's need for love from each of us is boundless. We have gathered here today in grief and sorrow, but we've also gathered to celebrate a life. We have come together to give thanks that we knew this vibrant person, to express our gratitude for the days and years we were able to share with Elfi. We are here to remember and memorialize a life of giving. By remembering the best of Elfi, by recalling some of her finest qualities, by honoring the principles, values, and dreams which guided her life, some of her enduring nobility flows into us, that we ourselves might be more noble in the days ahead. We are here for all of these things, but our first spiritual task is to face, full and unafraid, the reality of this death and the grief and loss we feel. Will Elfi's grandsons who are able to be present with us today, Anthony and Daniel and Alex, please come forward and light our chalice in honor of their grandmother. As this candle is lit, let us remember this enduring thought from the Scottish poet Thomas Campbell. To live in hearts we leave behind is not to die. You may be seated. Oh, you didn't get it quite lit. There we go. Yay. Okay. Thank you, boys. And now I'd like to share words in our reading adapted from the work of the Roman philosopher Seneca, who centuries ago wrote something very close to this. In the presence of death, we must continue to sing the song of life. We must be able to accept death and go from its presence better able to bear our burdens and to lighten the load of others. Out of our sorrows should come understanding. Through our sorrows, we join with all of those gripped by the fear of death. If another day be added to our lives, let us joyfully receive it, but let us not anxiously depend on our tomorrows. Though we grieve the deaths of our loved ones, we accept them and hold on to our memories as precious gifts. Let us make the best of our loved ones while they are with us, and let us not bury our love with their death. As a celebration of the life of someone dear to those in this room, Elfi's family has put together a selection of expressive music interwoven with spoken reflection. Please check your program for details of who is doing what as we listen to memories and tributes of Elfriede Crage, who lived among us for a little over 80 years. Everyone who speaks or sings here this afternoon is invited to take a thank you flower from this vase, which we will move down later, and place it in the special remembrance vase that's before sitting down. And towards the end of our service, we will invite anyone else who's so moved to do so as well. Think of this as remembrance vase as a collection of blooming symbols of the love and appreciation we all feel for the privilege and joy of having known Elfriede. First, we will begin with her children and her surviving sister. Elsa?
Good afternoon. I'm so glad you all came to honor my sister Elfi. I do not feel lonely anymore. We are a big family with family members in the US, in Omaha, Seattle, Houston and Boston, in Vancouver, Canada, and in Austria, in Vienna. But my sister Elfriede, called Elfi, was very special to me. We were 4 sisters. She was the oldest, the last sister I had. I was the youngest sister, 8 years younger than her. Elfi enjoyed a long, fulfilled life, and I have many good memories of her. One is very special to me and influenced my whole life from when I was about 11 years old. Elfi introduced me to a youth group at the Alpenverein, a well-known mountaineering club in Austria and Germany. She and my sister Inge attended folk square dancing lessons at the local club. I enjoyed the youth group and loved it from the beginning. I learned to love mountain walks and later hiking in the Alps and skiing off ski pistes. We were a great community. Somebody would pick up a guitar and we would sing German folk songs, of which I learned many. Singing folk songs connected me with my sister, who loved and practiced music all her life. My sister was also very talented with crafts and was sewing clothes without patterns for her children. She made complicated dirndl dresses with frills for her girdles when they were little and they were toddlers. She was very humorous, enjoyed good jokes and a good laugh. Angie, a niece from Vienna, writes, "My Aunt Elfi has given me a great treasure. She gave me many letters, postcards and drawings of her sister Inge, my mother, who passed away far too early. And also in conversations with her, I learned about my mother's life and sentimental values. I cannot thank Aunt Elfi enough. Gute Reise, Angie." The Parkinson's disease changed my sister's life tremendously. She became dependent on others, which was not easy for her. But she had a strong will, and with her love of life and the love of her children, Mickey, Renee, Suzanna and Katrina, she still enjoyed life, even when it became more and more limited. On my visits to Omaha, I loved to take her for walks in nature parks, which she enjoyed very much. And she liked small things, the beautiful art pictures in her room and the birds coming to the bird feeder outside her room. I'll always remember her joy of life, her humor and her ready smile. I'll miss her. May Elfi rest in peace.
And before we go further, I think I neglected to ask you, the system works better if you turn off your cell phones or put them on airplane. Okay, thank you.
I'd like first to thank everybody who's here, my family, Angelique, who's held me up, and those of you who are not my family that have been here. It is wonderful to know that my mother was able to touch so many lives so late in her life. She wanted, of course, all the happiness in the world for her children. There were some specific things that she tried to instill in us. The participation and appreciation of music. When we were young, there were times where a big book would come out called Hootenanny. And we'd go on the piano. My mother would take her station at the keyboard, and we would be standing on our side, looking at this book, strongly encouraged to sing along. The consequences could be dire if we did not sing. The music she gave us, the music she left us, is something that is important. We've all learned to play some instrument at some point. We've all learned to appreciate the music that we do appreciate. We all have different tastes, but there's still something in our life. Another thing that she really tried to give us was a sense of intelligence and learning. Her intelligence was fearsome. She always wanted to have more education than she did. And she always tried to give us all the knowledge that she could. There were several incidents of my teachers complaining that I would be in class completely not paying attention, distracting other students, because I was completely familiar with all the material that they were already presenting, even early, like first grade. And they would call me on questions on things they had just taught, and I already knew the answers because I learned them from my mother at home. A phrase I heard a lot as a child, Ach du liebe Zeit. The general translation is just an exclamation of surprise, like, how did you get so dirty in 20 seconds while I closed my eyes for a second? But the word-for-word translation is, oh, you dear time. And the time is dear. The time behind us is dear. The remembrance of her is dear. But the time ahead of us is also precious. And it is the memories that we take of her in the future, that we carry of her, that will keep her with us. Thank you all.
It tends to go faster if I actually read my notes. When I was 10, my mother took myself and my siblings to Austria to visit our family, and our home base there was in Langenlois with our great aunt Hilda. Langenlois is a small town, and my mother was amazed by the songbirds. They were so loud. That's what I thought. But she heard them as beautiful. And she was telling me so many mornings that we just don't have birds like that in Seattle. They just don't sing like that. So she made a recording so that she could play it when she got back to Seattle. She also loved the birds in Seattle, even though they didn't sing as loudly and as beautifully. And when I would visit her as an adult, she was always putting up bird feeders. She made her own suet, and she was always showing me the new way that she devised to putting these things out so that the birds could get them instead of the squirrels. Here in Omaha, when she moved into Bickford Assisted Living, she again wanted to love the birds. And to that end, she trimmed a bush outside of her room. The administrators at Bickford called Katrina, just flabbergasted, wanting to know where my mother got this saw that she'd used to trim the bush that then had to be removed because it was in such bad shape. But the bird feeder stayed. At Hillcrest, where she passed, she also put a bird feeder up outside the window. No bushes were damaged in the placing of this bird feeder. And my sister Katrina kept it filled so that my mom could enjoy the birds outside of her window till her last day. When I was little, my mother made all of my clothes. And one Easter, I remember her making a peach dress for me. I think it was Easter. And it was going to have pleats in it. And she stood there by the Ma Bell phone in the living room that young people don't know about. And she's calling for advice on how to put pleats in the fabric. And it involved vinegar and iron. And she stood in front of the ironing board with the spray bottle when I went to sleep, and the pleats came out perfect. I'm 10 years and 6 years older than my sisters, so my dresses were always a little bit more mature and more complicated than theirs. But she made matching dresses for them with a same motif but a blue background, and their dresses didn't have pleats, and they had eyelet lace. I think it was eyelet lace. And I could tell you stories about the dresses she made, but I was asked not to take all day. So just the one. When I was in middle school and high school, my mom, I think in middle school, she did make me a pair of jeans, but I liked the jeans actually, but I wanted name brand jeans, not name brands like we have now where they're like hundreds of dollars, but they might as well have been to my mother. I remember Lawmen and Normandy Rose, for instance, but my mother couldn't afford to buy these for me. And I don't think I ever had them, not once, but I think I had 3 pairs of jeans that I would wear to school when our washing machine broke. And she and my brother and, I don't know, maybe my sisters went to the laundromat. And while they were loading the clean laundry into the car, someone grabbed one of the laundry baskets. And 2 of my jeans were in that basket. And they came home and they told me, and I was like dumbfounded. There was nothing that could be done. They couldn't buy me new jeans. There just wasn't the money. And that's just how it was when we were growing up. I could have jumped up and down and complained, but I just had to accept it, which isn't really like me. But I somehow managed to arrive to school every day, dressed in clean clothes. Years later, my mom called me to tell me how proud she was that she somehow managed to buy new winter coats for both my sisters that school year. And it was a very proud accomplishment for her. And she was so happy. I had worn the same coat for 3 years, I think. And I didn't mind. She was so good at sewing. One time I had a hole here, 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 and here. She just put patches on both sides. It looked like a brand new coat. She did a Relief Society meeting, and only when looking at them did she realize most people would have thrown that blessed coat away. But Yeah, it was blue and the patches were yellow. And I was so happy for her. I knew my sisters would have had coats and they'd be patched, but I was so happy for her that she was able to do that and she was able to have that sense of accomplishment. And I just hope that it didn't cost her too dearly because she always provided for us first. And I just wish I would have appreciated the jeans she sewed me and let her keep sewing them. Because that's amazing.
Good afternoon, everyone. I had the pleasure of becoming Elfi's son-in-law by marrying her daughter, Suzanna. And I'd just like to share two memories that I have of Elfi to give a snapshot of how I remember her. So first, Elfi had a way with words and a delightfully sarcastic sense of humor. In one of our email correspondences, she sent me a note, and part of it went like this. This morning, I cut down vines that my neighbors have as a lush canopy over their lilac bush, which bravely persisted and managed to bloom high above its invaders while also supporting their heavy weight. Well, I cut down whatever hung over my fence, working on a ladder under the canopy and cutting away vegetation above me. I thought it would be a good occasion to trot out the old hard hat, which is hanging around here. So therefore, your mother-in-law. At this point in the email, she attached a picture of herself in profile, donning her hard hat. Elfi's Parkinson's was pretty far along at this point, which meant she probably shouldn't be climbing ladders alone to cut vegetation. But if you know her, then you also know that this wouldn't stop her. Nonetheless, in my response, I wrote, "For the sake of Susanna's health, I won't mention to her your recent ladder work, but I hope you like the look of the final result." And her response in typical Elfi form, "Well, I did wear a hard hat." Second, Elfi loved art in many forms and loved to share it. For my birthday a few years ago, she gave me a beautiful print of a painting by the Italian futurist painter Umberto Boccioni entitled "Dynamism of a Cyclist." Elfi picked this out for me because I had loved bicycling since I was young. And the piece, which is quite abstract, uses a blast of lines and colors to convey the energy of a bike racing along at speed. The Wikipedia entry for the painting describes it as an attempt to represent the dynamic sensation of a cyclist moving through time and space rather than a snapshot of a particular moment in time. So the print reminds me both of Elfi's love for a striking image and of her own dynamism, always moving through time and space, perhaps slower than she would have liked, but nonetheless moving.
I'm noticing some themes. My mother did so much. She raised 4 kids. I'm already losing it. She raised 4 kids in poverty and trauma, and she worked to make life rich. You already heard about many things. She also built us bunk beds. She taught us to cook and bake, and she gardened. This meant we had fresh vegetables, fruit, even berries, from raspberries to gooseberries. And she barely slept. For decades, she delivered newspapers. Hours of labor, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Still, she took us to beaches and parades and fairs. The house was full of library books, science shows, news, opera, art, plus an unabridged big dictionary, and the precious Encyclopedia Britannica set. When I had questions, my mother showed me how to use them to find the answers myself. You know, our mom made mistakes, of course, and some of them were big, but she never stopped trying. And she read widely and thoughtfully. She wrote poetry, crafted quilts, learned how to tat lace, One year, she tatted and crocheted enough ornaments to decorate the entire Christmas tree. And during all of this, she went to community college, part-time, university, part-time, then university full-time, and got her bachelor's degree in education and Germanics. And eventually, by her 50s, life had stabilized. She was teaching, her kids were doing okay, and then the wrist with arthritis started shaking. It wasn't arthritis. She kept teaching as long as she could, but her Parkinson's treatments weren't the miracles you see in movies. She didn't want to leave her house that she had worked so hard to keep and to improve. But she was so happy with how her move here allowed her to deepen her relationship with Katrina, who became such a fierce advocate for her care. Still, Parkinson's was a harsh turn in a life that had already been hard. But as you've heard, even as her body lost stability, as more tasks became unsafe, as old goals moved out of reach, she kept going. She kept finding ways to do what she loved. I wish I'd brought a sample of the cards that she made and mailed to us over the years with quilted fronts or collage artwork. When we all visited this summer, after her 80th birthday, I worked with her in July on a card series that used cutouts from different calendars to match abstract images with different birds. She was underestimated by so many people for so much of her life. One day when she was a university student, she came home and told me that her professor had heard about some impressive things I'd done in school, and then he asked her where I'd gotten it from. The intelligence. He had no idea of the woman he was talking to. Just this summer, thinking about current US and European politics, she was rereading works on nationalism. That's my research area. In fact, when I sent her my dissertation, she read it. I can't tell you how rare that is for the family to actually read the big dissertation. In fact, not only did she read it, she found 3 typos in the 3-page abstract that none of the rest of us had found. I wish I'd had her read it before I turned it in. My mom dealt with so many limitations, but as you've been hearing, she did so much. And there are people who would look at her life and my life and say that I, as a professor, have done more, accomplished more, surpassed her. They would be so wrong. I am in awe of how actively and creatively she lived her life. I am amazed at her resilience. And I know that my life is in debt to her labor, to her intellect, to how hard she tried, and to just how much she did. Thank you so much for coming. She was a wonderful woman, and she's worth remembering.
I have visual aids. Before I say anything about my mom, I do want to express gratitude for everyone that was involved in this. There was a lot of tears. There's been a lot of tears. Some people haven't seen them because I've been trying to keep it, together, but there was a lot of tears because of my mom's death, but there has been so much love that has been poured over me by this community, by the people who are here, by the people who are not here. There was even a church event that they were thinking about canceling so that more people could be here, which of course I said was not necessary, but not even occurred to me that people would come just to support us. And I want to thank those watching on YouTube. I know there are people from Seattle, there are people from Vienna, there are wonderful people supporting us. I've gotten so many cards, donations, there's been flowers, calls, and hugs, and Reverend Sherry had me come to church the week after, the Sunday after my mom died, and I went and everybody just poured out love. And Bill, of course, when I asked him to sing, he said it would be an honor. And Jay has also, he really thought about what he played. You know, the Moonlight Sonata at the beginning and the Clair de Lune at the end to end in this lighter thing. And Lloyd was here practicing the slideshow on Wednesday night. And Reverend Chari, of course, sorry, I don't know why I keep doing that. She, of course, planned everything. And then Reverend Sarah, we went over everything line by line. And of course, the Good Shepherd Funeral Home. So I want to thank everybody. I felt so loved throughout this. The day before my mother died, I was asked in a mock interview what my greatest accomplishment in life was. And I honestly replied, it was my relationship with my mom, which I think my family understands. We had a lot of rough patches, but despite all of it, we were extremely close. I can't share everything special about her, but today I want to emphasize her love of reading, her love of nature, her love for her family, and her determination. Recently, my mom talked about in her childhood, pieces of the newspaper were used for toilet paper. She'd piece them back together to have something to read as a child. It gave me context for how she taught myself and countless others to be grateful for the public library and books, which is evident in this keepsake that she made with a third grade class. And I'll put it on the remembrance table, but she did a lot of this with a typewriter. And she had all the kids color and write about why they loved books. I honestly give her credit for why my dyslexia hasn't affected my quality of life, because she taught me to love books. My mom often talked about her grandmother's wondrous garden, where she was able to eat as much as she wanted, which was significant since hunger wasn't unusual after World War II in Austria. She gave me the same experience when I was a child through her carefully planted garden with rhubarb and cherry trees. She also taught us to try to get all the top cherries too. She also taught me to have a sense of wonder in nature and look for ways it can heal. For instance, her solution for headaches was to open the window at night and let fresh air in, which, by the way, works. Often on Sunday afternoons, she would take us to the Rose Garden in Seattle, right by the zoo, and she would point out all the beautiful colors and how each one was different. And so I represented this with my grandfather's handmade flower. Everyone raved about her plum and apricot dumplings that she cooked. I also loved her Easter bunnies that she made, her bread bunnies. I loved her palatschinken or crepes and spätzle or little homemade noodles, and how she always made her table beautiful when she hosted. There was so much love and care in her preparations. It wasn't just food or a gathering, it was love. For my wedding, since I didn't have all the things necessary in a household, I'd always lived in student housing up till then, she went on a treasure hunt to all the thrift stores in Seattle to collect everything that was necessary in a good household, which included a silver tea set, which is so necessary, and also a cookie press, which I have to say the first time I used was when she was in a nursing home, so I could make her some butter cookies that she would love. She did buy pots and pans new, but was sure to try them out first to make sure they were just right. And from what I understand, she went through several sets before she settled on one that was just right for me. Isn't that sweet? My mom's determination was evident throughout her life, and I think we've all talked about it. A young man came to a board meeting at our housing cooperative and told everyone about a wandering old person that was dragging a tree behind her. That, of course, was my mom. She cut weed-like trees down and whittled beautiful walking sticks. This is one of them, even while her hands shook from Parkinson's. And people misrepresented her as confused. In one of her assisted livings, she made a gorgeous dancing lady out of the rippled inside of paper boxes and hung it from the ceiling without any proper tools, because she wasn't allowed them. Well, I mean, I snuck them in all the time, but it was truly art gallery worthy. Everyone thought my mom was amazing, and she truly was, not just for our family. I will be forever grateful for her goodness when I pick up a book, plant my garden, show love to my family, or just finish a crazy project that no one thinks I can do. My mom did it all the time. I invite you to do the same. Thank you.
At this is time in our ceremony, I invite others to come up, and to this we'll have an open mic here. Come up and say who you are, and then spend, 1, 2, 3 minutes sharing some memory that you have about Elfriede and her family. Speak up here, and then when you're finished, take a flower if you'd like and add it to the remembrance vase.
Hello, my condolences to the family. My name is Douglas Lee Regier. I'm a member of the church here. I want to ask one of the kids, how old was your mom when she moved to Omaha? 70, so a little over a decade ago. Well, I didn't know Elfi real well, but I had the privilege of giving her rides sometimes and taking her places and so on. Probably to church and maybe something else, I forget. But anyhow, what I remember most is her great sense of humor. She would rib us and tease and just make jokes and so on. I can't be more specific, but it was really a joy and a lot of fun to be with her. Who's next?
Well, these then are a few of our thoughts and our remembrances of Elfi. Whether or not we have collectively succeeded in accurately portraying her life, it is surely, as UU minister Charles Gaines once wrote, no person can sum up the life of another. Life is too precious to be passed over with mere words which ring empty. Rather, it must remain as it is remembered by those who loved and watched and shared. For such memories are alive, unbound by events of birth and death, and as living memories, we possess the greatest gift one person can give to another. It is to each of you, then, that the living memories of Elfriede's life are committed. Let us be together now in a moment of quiet meditation. To your hearts and minds go the enduring remembrances of this life. We now invite each of you who has not yet had a chance to add a flower to her remembrance vase to do so if you care to. As Katrina sings a German lullaby, a farewell lullaby, an usher will pass you the vase, and starting from the back, and come up and place a flower in here, and then return to your seat.
More
believe Suzanne's going to share some of Elfriede's poetry.
These are 3 short poems by my mother. As I was going through some of her poetry and I read these, I realized these are all about having a voice and about words, neither of which is surprising. In that song, I grew up singing in English because it was one of several songs that she grew up with that she translated to English for us. So, 3 poems about the use of words, the need for words, and their inadequacies. Too many words. Caught in a prison of spouting words from always moving lips. Too many words, no deeds, just words. Every word becomes a stick that beats on me, demands a house, a monument, a deed. I hide, am stiff and frozen, insignificant. Let it ride out, this onslaught. Too many words. The next poem I think of as being about some of those words that she was talking about in that one, and about a short war between the UK and Argentina that resulted in just over 1,000 deaths, most of them Argentinian. The Falkland Islands. Quote, "With quiet determination, we send the fighting force and will shoot first and talk later." Unquote. Oh, Lady Prime Minister, signing the papers in Downing Street in deep plush upholstery might indeed be a quiet act. But I say in my mind, there is something wrong, woefully wrong. I thought I knew the meaning of quiet, but now I stand in front of it and would like to shake it to consciousness, and from the top of my lungs I scream, "Quiet, how loud are you?" Or was I so used to confusion and so resigned to unchangeable fate or senselessness that I just shook my head and murmured it? And finally, what language? "And I shall not silent be. From the rooftops and the high trees and the high walls will I shout. I will speak my own language, the language of being, the pure one, the language of God." I suspect there will be no words, but translation and instance of whole entities. I suspect there will be no persuasion, no arguing, no fearful defining, but presence. Will there be need of shouting, or rooftops, or high trees, or high walls? 3 poems of my mother's. Thank you.
And now for some visual remembrances. It is done. We have bid loving farewell to Elfriede Crage. Her body has been committed to the purifying flame, earth to earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. And finally, this from the Native American Ishi people of the Pacific Northwest, who imagined that their dead spoke to them, saying, "When I am dead, cry for me a little. Think of me sometimes, but not too much. It is not good for you or your wife or husband or your children to allow your thoughts to dwell too long upon the dead. Think of me now and again as I was in life, at some moment which is pleasant to recall, but not for too long. Leave me in peace, as I shall leave you too in peace. While you live, let your thoughts be with the living." Let us honor the life of Elfriede Crage by living ourselves more nobly and lovingly in the days ahead. As you return to the routines of your lives, go in great peace, dear friends, and may an abiding peace go with you. Amen. As we extinguish this chalice, may we keep Elfriede Crage in our minds and offer a prayer. Spirit of life and compassion, be with us now and forevermore. Please remain in your seats until the prelude is over, and then you are invited to come downstairs for some continued sharing and refreshments.